Welcome to the Anxiety Slayer podcast. I'm Shann, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Chad Lawson. Chad is a pianist, composer, podcaster, yogi, and breathing coach from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going to discuss his new album, Breathe, which was recorded at Abbey Road, and his experience with the intersection of music and wellness. Chad's goal is to provide listeners an emotional embrace and to hold their hand through everything life throws at them. And get this, his music has already been streamed 500 million times. That's just awesome. Welcome to Anxiety Slayer, Chad.
Thank you so much, Shann. I so appreciate your invitation.
I am grateful to have found you I listened to your music a few months ago and then, liked you on Spotify and listened. And then this morning I had the gift of starting my day listening to Breathe, which is the name of your new album. What a gorgeous album.
Thank you.
And the color of the sky was playing at the very moment that my husband invited me to look up. And the sky was this bright purple, beautiful color. And I thought, look at that. If that's not magic, I'm not sure what is.
It's always an amazing experience, right? To be surprised by something so beautiful, and especially when it's something so beautiful every morning and every night, right? And something that's always just right there in front of us. If we can just take just 2 minutes just to kind of notice it,
Yeah, and to have that synchronicity of listening to this beautiful music and to be looking at the sky and just being in that space of gratitude and mindfulness, and just to be in that moment was pretty magical.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I do joke in the sense that the album, or at least my music, it needs a warning label. It needs a, do not operate heavy machinery while listening to. Because, in other words, don't drive listening to it, unless you're in LA, because then you can just sit there in traffic and then kind of unwind.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, that's what music does, though, right? I mean, music is like, in a roundabout way, we live in a time right now where we've seen everything, we've heard everything, we've experienced everything, but we feel nothing. And I think that's really something that I've kind of stumbled upon recently, which is where literally everything is so accessible that we've almost become jaded to the sense of going out and looking at the sky and looking up and being like, oh my gosh, those hues are amazing. I've never seen that before, and I'm probably never going to see this color again. And if we can get back to that point of being able to feel something, that really is what I'm hoping, my music does, personally. If I could sum up the reason why my music is what it is, it's because I truly I want to help people. I want them to be able to experience and feel, right? Because a lot of times, particularly with this style of music that I do, before the pandemic, I'd get emails that say, I'm going through a really difficult time. I'm going through a divorce, or I just lost a loved one to cancer or something. And so I used to get those emails quite a bit. And the listener would say, I go home and I lay on the floor and I listen to your music for, 45 minutes, and it just tunes the world out. And I'm just able to kind of just sit and just resonate in that moment. And then once the pandemic really came about, those emails were just more and more. And, there was a lady that emailed me. It was on a Saturday morning, and she said, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to one of your songs, and the tempo of the song, the pacing of the song matches my husband's breathing as he takes his last breath. And at that point, that really was the eureka, the enlightening moment, to where I recognized this isn't about Chad Lawson. This isn't about what I'm trying to do as an artist, or seeing my name and lights somewhere. It really is about creating something that allows people to emotionally heal, to allow them to emotionally feel and be comforted in what they're going through. But all of that really does stem back to, how are you feeling in that present moment? And what can I do to be the catalyst to allow that to happen? You know, even with the title of this album, Breathe, it really was kind of this, correlation of the last 2 years. And like, I think it's interesting. It took a pandemic for us to be able to stop and say, what kind of life am I living? Like really, like what have I been doing for the last 2 years? And, Mother Nature was just like, I'm going to make the world stop just for a little bit and really kind of self-reflect. And then you have these, these people, you had this group that was being able to recognize and see this and say, okay, I understand that the last 2 years, is a wake-up call for how I want to be moving out of this lifestyle, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do. So like they have all of this sentiment, and they just don't know how to release it. And so at this album, Breathe, it really was my invitation for them to be able to put something on, put on some headphones, and to just completely close their eyes and have this huge release, this huge exhale.
And it really does. It really is that sort of gift, Chad. I mean, in some of your marketing, you talk about helping you calm the mind in a world full of noise. And that was my experience listening.
Thank you.
Without question. And it's just, we deserve these moments. We deserve to carve out time for these moments to listen to some beautiful music and to let it sink in and to let it carry us away, to let it support us, soothe us. And you are using music to normalize the conversation around mental health and to destigmatize that. And I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about that piece, if you would.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just before the pandemic really hit, I had been studying the marriage of music and mental health. Yes, music makes us feel good, but why? Like, what's the science behind it? Because I really wanted to dig deep into this and understand what happens when people hear a vibration, and that vibration, finds its way into our emotions. And so the further I dug, I found that there's a thing called BDNFs. And so BDNFs is like this happy hormone that our body creates. And basically it's a hormone that makes you feel good. So if you've ever noticed, when you go on a walk, or when you exercise, or when you're having coffee with a friend, you're just sharing conversation, or when you're listening to music, the reason why we feel better, and the science behind this, is called BDNF levels. And so it's this hormone. But the most interesting thing that I found in this is that music was the only passive activity. Everything else was active. So you had to be doing something. You had to be purposefully putting your shoes on, going out for a walk, purposely sitting down with someone and having a conversation. But with music, you could just literally sit and hit play, and all of a sudden your emotions, your levels of this BDNFs, they begin to increase. And there was a fascinating study by Harvard and Oxford Press that said listening to calming music for 3 to 5 minutes, just 3 to 5 minutes, elevates these levels, elevates our mood. And I found that so incredible. I was okay, here's the science. This is so fantastic. Because I was really curious, why my music had that effect on people, right? Because I'm a huge empath, just by nature. I waited tables for 15 years, and that was the best, most educational thing I ever could have done for my career as a musician, because you're learning how to care for people. You're learning to take care of people's needs and accommodate them before they even realize they have a need, right? So when I was waiting tables, if somebody asked for something, I missed it. I was too late. I didn't anticipate that. And so how that's transitioned now is I'm wanting my music to facilitate those needs of people that they may not even have, right? And so it's like when they actually listen to some of my music and all of a sudden they're crying for no reason, and then they begin to ask themselves, why am I crying or why am I smiling, right? It's like I want them to be able to reflect on whatever it is that they're going through. Because a lot of times, if you think about your favorite song, it's usually attached to a feeling or a time. Maybe it was your first kiss. Maybe it was, your first time you got a puppy or something, and there was a song on the radio. And music has this amazing way to kind of timestamp where we are in life and the emotion of that. And so when we hear that song again, it takes us back to that memory of just happiness, right? And so it's like if we can create that avenue of being aware of the moment when we first hear the song or that experience, and then have something take us back to that. And then the way that transitioned into the podcast is because I started realizing I can't tour because of the pandemic, but I still wanted to stay relevant with my listening audience.
Oh yeah, please tell us about Calm It Down. I didn't include that in your open.
It kind of ties into the whole mental health thing. So I couldn't tour, and so I was like, I want to still be relevant and create something where I'm like still connecting to my audience. However, no longer from stage, but now it has to be through a different avenue. And what would that avenue be? And I write the music for this podcast called Lore, Lore, and it's this huge podcast. It's like the history of folklore, and it's super creepy stuff. And I don't even listen to the podcast because that kind of stuff just scares me to death. Anyway, so I was like, if my buddy Aaron can do this, then I'm going to dive in. I'm going to give this a try. And so I just started I've been doing transcendental meditation for a very long time. So meditation's a really big thing to me, and obviously mindfulness. And then that really opened the door for me to be able to just start doing the podcast, marrying music and mental health, and saying, okay, let's be able to just turn off all distractions. And it was kind of nice, like not having to sit on a stage and have that visual aspect of almost entertainment, but to where the listener, as many of your listeners, have that same ability to where they can find a space all on their own. They can close their eyes and they can turn on your podcast and they can find a sense of healing. Because I think that's really what people are looking for right now, a sense of healing, a sense of hope, a sense of guidance. And that really was the narrative behind the music and also what I was trying to do just emotionally. And it just has all come together.
You, in a recent episode of Calm It Down, shared the value of life as a teacher with an exploration in the ways that life continuously gives us opportunities for learning and growth. And I loved where you said that creativity, focus, and a pinch of humility, with all of those things, anything is possible. That made me smile.
But it's I appreciate that. It's hard though, isn't it, sometimes? Because having all three of those, sometimes we can be really creative and the humility not there. Or sometimes we can have too much humility, which then dampens our creativity. So like finding that balance of embracing all three of it, I think, and that's the thing, is just like, if we go through the idea that there's an opportunity for every single thing in the day, right? Instead of there just being like, this isn't working. Gosh darn it, this isn't working. Well, you know what? Like even before this interview, I was having, a little difficulty with the setup as far as the microphone is concerned. And I had to stop and I had to say, okay, what should I learn from this? Well, I should learn that I probably should set this up the night before, instead of just like being grumpy at myself. There's this amazing quote, and I've got it written down, and it says, when difficulties rise, the positive thinker takes them as creative opportunities. I'm going to say that one more time. When difficulties arise, the positive thinker takes them as creative opportunities. And that's constantly what I'm trying to think about, right? I'm a blue sky kind of guy, right? There's always like, that silver lining with stuff. So even with the pandemic, I was even trying to like find a blue sky there. I'm probably one of the very few people grateful for the pandemic, and I use that term loosely, because it allowed me to be home for 2 years, right? It allowed me to be with my kids. It allowed me to be in my own bed, right? And, my dad, he had stage 4, and so it allowed me to be, home with him during his last chapter. And so it's like having that mindset of like, everything is a teachable moment, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, I agree. I found it interesting that you had the opportunity to incorporate meditation and guided breathing techniques into a performance, and maybe more than one, but for a packed house in London. That you want to talk about just bringing a huge smile to my face. I'm like, that is awesome. Like, who does that? Tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, it's just like, my thought was, okay, anytime you go see an event, maybe a musical or a concert or a movie even, right? And it's like, we make it an event. And so, we'll go out to dinner, and then maybe the meal will be good. Maybe the meal, not so good. Maybe the waiter was rude, and, you all of a sudden you look at your watch and you're like, oh my gosh, we got to go. And so you get the check, and then you dash to the car, and you go to wherever the venue is, and you go get your tickets, and then you're sitting down, and you're like, oh my gosh, are the kids okay? Do I need to call the babysitter? And so like all these things are going through our mind and just rushing. And so by the time that the curtain opens, like our mind is literally everywhere but present. And so, and then, the person's like, they're sitting down, they're like, okay, entertain me. And so
because I've got to be gone by such and such a time. Exactly.
And as soon as the house lights come back on, the show's over or whatever it may be, they look at each other and like, oh, okay, hey, do you want to go get a drink? And so it's just like, wait, what just happened, right? And so like, and what I've been doing now is I've actually been opening each performance with a very simple guided breathwork technique. But like some shows, we're actually starting to do a 45 minutes before the show guided breathwork meditation. So for those people that actually wanted to just come before, like doing one in Toronto coming up, doing one in DC, I think there's another one somewhere, because I really want people to be, it all goes back to that feeling. We don't experience feeling anymore because, again, our mind is everywhere but there. And so honestly, some of the very simple things that I do with, opening up a performance is, I'll come out, I'll play a song, that kind of like get things started. And then I'll just start sharing with them. I'll start saying, what, when was the last time you felt something? And so this is when I'm kind of like gently just playing some chords. And I'm beginning to like slow the tempo of what I'm playing because I want their subconscious and I want their breathing and their heartbeat to begin to lower to like this, 70 BPM area. And so what I do is I have them close their eyes and I say, what, every time I play a note or every time I play a chord, I want that to be a breath in. And then the next time I play a note or a chord, just simply let that be the breath out. Because there's this whole thing called box breathing, which is where like you imagine this box and each side of the box is 4 seconds or whatever it may be. And, one side of the box is you're breathing in for 4 seconds, and then the other side is you're holding that breath for 4, and then you're exhaling for 4, and then you're holding that for 4. So it's 4 all the way around. But I kind of simplify it a little bit more. I get rid of the holding just for, just for opening the show. So every time I play a chord, they're breathing in, I'm counting to 4 myself personally, and then I'll hit a chord, and that's their exhale. So all they're hearing is music, but beginning to slow their heart rate. And so after a few, rounds of this, I then start taking, and they don't know I'm doing this, is I then start playing 5 seconds. And then it gets to be where it's like 6 seconds. So they're really slowing their breath down. And I'm doing this in the key of the second song. And so that second song gently flows in and the performance begins. And so their mind is right there. They're present. And they're able to enjoy the next, however long the performance is, rather than it being just a rush, get there, finish, and go home. And if you think about it, like most of our life, we don't remember, right? It's like long days, short years. And why is that? Well, it's because we're not present, right? And so we look back and we're like, why don't I remember anything in my life? Well, because our mind was everywhere else but at that moment. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to gently educate these people on how to appreciate the moment that they're in.
I bet you can feel a big change in the energy at your performances when you do this. I mean, you personally.
It's amazing.
I bet it is.
It is. It's amazing. I was at Stanford recently, and I was doing a breathwork session. It was separate from the performance. So the performance was that evening, but during the day, we offered a breathwork session. And it was interesting, and I don't want to divulge too much because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. But during one of the parts of the session, I'm having people stand up, and we're all closing our eyes, and there's about 100 people there. Everyone's eyes are closed. And I, step by step, I go through each part of the body, and I have everybody exhale each part of that body. So for instance, I have them bring focus to their feet. And I'll say, you know what, some of you are in a place right now in life where you don't feel like yourself, or you don't feel like you belong there, right? And so we breathe in this fresh air, we breathe in this fresh energy into our feet, and then we exhale that out through our feet. And then we go through every body part, your legs, and your back, and your arms, and your mind, and your heart, and everything. Because all of that is related to emotions. And it was amazing to see afterwards just people coming up in tears.
Oh, yeah.
Because
what a gift.
When do we take the time to say, hey, you know what? I'm really going through something and I want to release this. We don't. Mm-mm. And so, that's truly what I'm trying to do. Because if you think about it, a lot of people, they correlate anxiety to grief. Now, grief doesn't necessarily have to mean the passing of someone. Grief can also mean the passing of a memory or a time in life, or something that you were really hoping for that didn't happen. And then we attach our grief to that, which then turns to anxiety, because now we're worried about putting our hope into something else, because from our last experience, it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. And so we're building this emotional wall around every experience that we have.
And then we stop making choices, stop taking risks, stop making choices, make our world smaller, more air quotes, controllable.
So that's my hope. That's my hope.
Well, you are making such a beautiful contribution to all that hear your music and that have the good fortune to spend time with you live in concert. I'd love it if you'd walk us through a short guided breath practice if you're down for that.
Yeah, definitely so. Absolutely. So what I would love for you to do right now is to simply just close your eyes. And if you would, just put your hands in your lap. We're not going to focus on anything breathing right now. We're literally just closing our eyes. Now, when I play a note, I would like for you to take a very simple breath in. You don't have to overthink it. We're literally just doing what's called conscious breathing, to where we're just breathing normal, but we're just kind of paying attention to it. And then in just a moment, when I play another note or another chord, that's when we're going to exhale that breath. So for instance, when I do this, that would be a breath in. That would be a breath out. And we'll just continue doing this breath in and breath out. All right? So just nice and relaxed. Go ahead and exhale. Just kind of let that out a little bit. And here we go. I'm going to walk you through it for a little bit, and then I'm going to just continue playing without leading you. Here we go. So the first time we're going to just breathe in. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Breath in, out. Breath in. Breath out. Inhale. Just relax your breath for a moment. And just feel how your chest is moving, your stomach is moving. Maybe you're feeling how the air goes into your nose. And the interesting thing is, sometimes we start getting some random thoughts that come into our mind, and that's okay. Our brain is doing what it's supposed to do. It's thinking. But we just want to gently bring our thought back to how we're inhaling, how we're exhaling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so lovely.
It's hard, right? It's hard for us to just take 2 minutes. There's years ago I was doing my transcendental meditation, and it just felt so good. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget like that moment. I know exactly where I was when I was doing it, and it's like I just want to stay here. I just like want to stay in this moment and just live this forever. And as much as I wanted to, it kind of struck me of we're not meant to. We're not meant to stay in this constant euphoria of bliss. The way I see this is we're meant to find a time of healing, find a time of breathing, of exhaling, and finding the time to rejuvenate and to kind of recenter our focus. But our path, if you will, is to, once we're done with that stay, with that feeling so amazing, our role is to go out and assist those that don't know how to do that, haven't found that key, right? Or they don't even know that there's something that can help them through their anxiety, through the struggles that they're going through. And so I think it's incredibly important for us to recognize that we need that self-care, that time of being able to go in and lick our wounds and to self-heal, to be able to go back out into a world that is broken, and to be able to go back out into a world that sees people with scars, with struggles, and then to tend to their scars and to their struggles as they begin to learn how to heal. And then in turn, they go out and then they find someone else. You know, I did an episode called Scars of Hope. And the way I see it, like the scars that we have, that we feel that we're scarred in certain areas, those are actually stripes. Because you made it through something. And instead of looking at that as like a scar, it's actually a stripe. It's almost like a badge of honor. Being like, you know what, I was strong enough to get through this. And so now our role is to go out and look for those people with those scars that maybe aren't as strong as you were in getting to that.
This time with you today has been such a balm for my soul, and hopefully for the listeners as well. Your music, your voice, your outlook, your generous sharing. Thank you so much, Chad.
Shann, thank you. This has been one of the best Mondays I've had in a very long time.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
I truly appreciate this.
That was Chad Lawson. Listen to his Calm It Down podcast wherever podcasts are playing, and be sure to listen to his new album, Breathe. You can find it on Spotify, and you can buy the album and get updates on his new shows, new music, and more at chadlawson.com.